all media.
That's like the greatest.
That's the Aussie guys, man.
Did Five-ish do that? Who did that?
The Aussie guys.
The Aussie guys.
Yeah.
Incredible.
That's because they're happy with me staying up till 2:30 in the morning to do a podcast in Australia. I did that this year, and they were like, "Really?" I'm like, "That's like daytime for me."
That's
that time of year,
cat, though, right? That's not Zook.
No, it's not Zook. That's a generic one for sure.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's get this thing rolling, and we'll go on in 3, 2, 1. We're a week away from Aaron Rodgers potentially being traded. Who knows when Julio Jones is going to get traded? And a return of the Hurly-Gurly man, all that and more. Tonight, it's the Audible Live. It's Cecil Lammey, Sigmund Bloom, Matt Waldman. You can see our smiling faces. You can hear our dulcet tones of our voice. And Matt, let's start with you. And let's start with Todd Gurley, because DeAndre Swift fantasy GMs are like, oh my God, like it's bad enough you have Jamal Williams, right? And there's plenty of conversation around Jamal Williams. Bloom, I think I saw you tweeting about that this week. So let's get into this Lions situation, and the Lions taking a look at Todd Gurley.
Yeah, and it's certainly one of those things that would be awful for DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams fantasy GMs, because when you look at this split as it is, you could see a Melvin Ingram, Austin Eckler type of upside for these guys if the offensive line works out in Detroit. The problem is you throw Gurley into that mix, and he's going to vulture opportunities both as a receiver and as a goal line rusher, and that pretty much neuters the value of both of the backs that you have there. But the kind of the saving grace with this, and I'm going to lean on it, is that Jeff Risdon, who I think we all know and love in terms of the work that he does, he had some observations about that in a recent article, and he talks about that there's really no familiarity with Gurley with this staff and with the organization, and he's pretty sure, or he feels from the tenor of what he's heard, that it's unlikely that he's going to sign there. But if that's the case, then why did he meet? And I think the answer might be it's kind of a getting to know you meeting, an opportunity to kind of learn a little bit more about the player in case they need him, because behind Swift and Williams isn't much. You have Jamar Jefferson, who is an interesting player. I really like what he might be able to become in that offense. But, again, he's a little less proven as a receiver than he is as a runner. And he's mostly, I call him toss because that's like his play, like outside zone, and toss is like really his thing. Right. So he may have to be a little better inside. And then after that is pretty much Rakeem Boyd and Sorry Clayton. I don't think we've done a Sorry Clayton before, but Sorry Clayton.
It's a first time.
He is not a player that I understood why they even acquired in any fashion. He's a straight line-ish player. He makes Darren McFadden look like he knows where he is. Dedrick Mills, though, is also another player who I expect to beat out Boyd, who's kind of a tough straight line runner with a little bit of wiggle, but he's nothing special either. He's a career backup at best. So maybe bringing Gurley in case somebody gets hurt in camp, they're familiar with him if he doesn't sign somewhere right away.
Bloom, you're up, and people want you to sing the Hurly-Gurly man, but let's talk about this line situation and why DeAndre Swift disappoints us so.
Yeah. And, the Hurly-Gurly thing is, check out Donovan. Everyone should just understand Donovan and the role his music played, and just everything, the mysticism that Todd Gurley was that shooting star for a few years. Brad Holmes was actually the director of college scouting when they drafted Todd Gurley. So, we already see the affinity and belief in Jared Goff. Why not? It's like a vet minimum contract. Todd Gurley wants to play football because he likes playing football. And the thing is, I see Bill Barnwell. I don't mention Bill Barnwell that much, but he's like, the whole Football Outsiders crew. I mean, he's shot to the moon in terms of he has kind of a throne and a mountaintop that he speaks from. And Barnwell projects Trey Turner to sign with the Lions. Now, Halapuli Vati Vaitai can be a hell of a run-blocking guard. You put Turner in there between Ragnow, Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker. I mean, I know that's like motorboating fantasy island. I mean, just they're gonna push everybody downfield. So why not Todd Gurley behind that? But I do think in fantasy, the bigger story here is just the frustration that this backfield's going to be. You know, we talked about Jamal Williams and Anthony Lynn gushing about him as his A back. And the point is, if Anthony Lynn has an A back and a B back, I mean, that's a committee. I mean, he's basically telling us, like, this is how I think about my backfield. So for DeAndre Swift, it just gets worse with this possibility, but it makes sense to me. And I would love to see the Lions, even though the game scripts might not be there because of the defense, try to just go total old school and bully ball everybody in the trenches.
Well, didn't that what he said? Like, hey, we're just going to break kneecaps, right?
Right.
We're going to break your kneecaps. Well, maybe Gurley can help you do that. And Matt, Gurley showed a little bit better on Twitch, or excuse me, on Periscope. Too many channels. Michael says Todd did have some good runs last year.
He did.
So Gurley's got more left in the tank that people think he's washed up. He's not what he used to be. He's far from washed up.
Yeah, I mean, it's the difference between being an elite back to being an above average back. And I think the problem is that in fantasy terms, a lot of fantasy analysts and then fantasy players, if the guy isn't top 3, then he stinks. I mean, it's like sometimes there's a little bit of that either or mentality right away when when a player loses it all. But Atlanta, again, didn't have much of a great line. They have some promising guys on the right side that they hope to get a little bit better, this year. But Gurley was okay. The thing is that he has to be managed a fair bit. And so at that point, they look at that and they felt, Atlanta was probably thinking like, we need to get out a year early. We don't want it to fall apart on us. And having a guy like Mike Davis, who is, probably a little better than Gurley right now, but probably in the same tier, but moving up, from his perspective, whereas from Gurley, it's moving down. And you get a really strong receiver out of Davis as well. And I think that Atlanta's just heading in a different place organizationally. But I like what Detroit is trying to do from a bully ball standpoint, because, at least talking to a friend of ours that I can't mention by name at this point, but he was scouting Lions tape because he has a connection there. Let's just put it that way. He tweeted me the other day and said, man, the only receiver with juice on that team might be, I think, was a Khalif Raymond. And he said, he's like, and he mentioned a player.
He just can't catch.
Yeah, he mentioned a player to me about, have you ever seen anybody get better at being able to make cuts and run routes when it comes to decelerating? And I was like, no. I said the closest guy might be Brashard Perriman, but I can't even say that that's great. And he said, speaking of which, that's what I've been watching today, and that was the player I was thinking of. So pretty much everyone sees that, and Jeff Risdon today was talking about him in practice, saying he can't decelerate. He accelerates unbelievably, but he can't decelerate.
Well, and it might be because Perriman, we didn't get to see that much from him because he's a 9-route guy. It's like, show us how fast you are all the time. Bloom, is there any spot you'd want Gurley to go? Because I thought about it earlier. Not that I can't stand Melvin Gordon, but I can't really stand Melvin Gordon. I'd rather have Todd Gurley than Melvin Gordon. I mean, in that sort of situation with Javonte Williams, like, I think it'd be great. Gordon's stuck here. He's highly paid. Whatever is whatever. But again, Gurley's got more than people think. Any team stand out to you that could use him?
Yeah, well, you just think Miami, right? Miami wants to assert itself as a winning team.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, and Gurley, and you're right, Cease, to lead in with the idea that Gurley had more left in the tank than the common perception held. And Matt, you're right to say that because he was so great that when he slows down, it's just jarring. But it doesn't mean he can't contribute. In a team like New England could use Gurley. Like Bill Belichick would know what to do with Gurley, right? So I think that's what it's. Miami's interesting because we're watching. It's kind of reminiscent of Cleveland and the Sashi Brown era, where it's like they have so many cards to play. And you're watching what they're doing, and some of the stuff they're doing is brilliant. Some of the way they're aligning the talent they're acquiring, the way they're using free agent money and draft picks and like parlaying draft picks into future draft picks. Some of it's brilliant, but then you also see this team like sign Kyle Van Noy to a big deal and then cut him after 1 year. So they're figuring it out, and you just wonder if Brian Flores and Chris Greer see the holes on this team, because it seems right now like they're playing a little bit of running back doesn't matter chicken, and just throwing as little as they possibly can at the position and see if it really doesn't affect their chances of winning. And I think we'll all probably find out that it will.
Yeah, it's almost like they're waiting for someone to get cut, like someone specifically to get cut.
Ooh.
We'll talk about that later. Matt, super quick, what's the matter with Georgia backs recently? Because Sony Michel, like, in all due respect for all Georgia backs, right? But it seems like Nick Chubb lived up to what Georgia backs are. And then Michel and DeAndre Swift have already fallen off, like, so fast. And it's like, well, they should have been much better. I'm not saying Chubb level, but a Georgia back usually is that, apple of your eye. And that's not the case with Swift or Michel.
Yeah, well, both those guys, I mean, Michel's been hurt and the knees were bad enough in terms of examination, just after the around the draft time that they knew that he was going to have to be managed. So it was one of those curious picks by New England where if you're a New England hater, you could joke that they hit the lottery with Tom Brady and that was really it. But that with Michel, it's been the knees, because you can see that when he is healthy enough to play, he runs pretty strong. It's just that this is a guy that really shouldn't have been a first-round pick due to the injuries. Now, Swift, I thought was a little overrated, and a lot of that had to do with that he's a good pass catcher, not a great route runner. He has this weird combination when it comes to your speed acceleration combination. He needs a long runway to get up to top speed. And then he's a guy that gets caught, if not, he gets caught from behind pretty quickly. You don't see a lot of breakaway runs in his game. He's a guy he's a doubles hitter at best. And he's a player that doesn't break a ton of tackles. So, you look at Georgia had a pretty strong offensive line, and they also had other backs in that backfield and that stable. So I just think it was a case of two players in a row who produced well in college, but didn't really have the skills to be elite backs the way that Georgia has been able to generate with guys like Gurley and Chubb over the past 10 years. But, and I don't think Zamir White, who is at Georgia right now, is probably going to be an elite back. But there's this kid who looks a little like Eddie George by the name of Melton, who Cecil and I are going to be out at the docks, talking about him in a couple of years.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes, I cannot wait. And it is the Audible Live here, Thursday night show. Cecil Lammey, Matt Waldman, Sigmund Bloom. And Bloom, the question comes up in the chat room, but I'm thinking, we're like a week away from when Aaron Rodgers could be traded. A week from now, he could be a Denver Bronco. Now, whether or not that's going to happen,
right.
The Kenny Mayne interview, all these sorts of things, it's all about people. Okay, if they make him the highest paid quarterback in the league, is it still about people? Or I guess people that paid you? Because the chances, the closer we get, it almost seems like the further the chances get away. Not that the Broncos' interest has waned, it hasn't. But it just seems like, okay, they're going to figure it out, right?
Well, it is a situation with inertia, like you're indicating. The longer that we go without hearing something, some sort of change, unfortunately, doing what we do, over obsessing about football, trying to parse and monitor everything, the build up to the draft. This is where Waldman's so lucky, because he gets to sit all this out because he's in the lab, he's in the bunker generating his own stuff, his own nuclear bombs. So, we're watching all these meters, like gossip columnists, basically. It's gossip. But in hindsight, when we see how things unfold, often the gossip does have some sort of indicator, or the gossip opens up our mind to the possibility. So when it happens, we're not blindsided by it, and we process it. And with this Rodgers thing, I feel like the peak iron is hot moment has passed already. And you're right.
Right.
Rodgers is cryptic, as always. I mean, look, don't assume that Rodgers, I don't think Rodgers is like Tom Brady in the sense that I don't know that Rodgers has like an exit strategy or an end game in mind with this. I don't know that Rodgers even wanted this getting out, right? I mean, the story is that the Packers were the ones that put it out, not Rodgers. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, who knows what's actually the base motive or where Rodgers is coming from and what he wants to achieve with this, because the point was made that Russell Wilson has basically gotten what he wanted, right?
And
Do
the
we remember
narrative
this?
has changed, and they were almost on similar tracks, Bloom.
Right.
And now all of a sudden, Russell's like, I'm totally in. And the language is for 2021. So
Sure.
that's very interesting to note. And we could see
Right,
Wilson
right.
somewhere else next year. But it's like Seattle has not necessarily caved, but just realized and understand the modern athlete and the modern quarterback.
Yeah.
What do you want?
And
We're
they
gonna
did it.
do what you want.
Right. That went under the radar, right?
Yes,
Nobody is shouting
yes.
that from the mountaintops, because really we had these 3 stories coming into this offseason. We're really 2, and the Rodgers one was just kind of simmering on the back burner. But with Watson, well, that's just that's turned into something like, gothic horror. Wilson got what he wanted. He got a Waldron, a pass game coordinator, offensive coordinator. They got Gabe Jackson. They improved the offensive line, and then they drafted Dwayne Eskridge in the 2nd round. That's what he wanted. So what will Green Bay do? You have to at least assume, with Rodgers being a rational actor here, that he's not going to just lay down his hand and fold, right? Why would you sit down at the table if you were going to fold the whole time? Rodgers doesn't strike me as that type of person anyway. So is it money? Is it someone getting fired? Is it some trading for Julio Jones? I don't know. But I think we saw Wilson and Seattle kiss and make up in a way that wasn't really noted, and something is going to happen here. So that could be a trade, but you would think, given time in Green Bay, cooler heads will prevail.
And is it a June 1st, June 2nd trade, Matt? Or is this something like Carson Palmer years ago? Would that happen in like October, whatever, when he got moved? Like, is it that sort of staring contest? Again, I'm in Denver and talk about Aaron Rodgers every night on the radio for at least half an hour. So is it much ado about nothing in a week? Or is this maybe going to take some time, Matt?
I think it might take some time. Part of it has to do with who they're having conversations with, because if they're having conversations outside of Denver and it's with an NFC team by any chance, then they might want to wait as long as possible so that that there's a short ramp up time for this offense to get acclimated to Rodgers, so at least gives them a competitive advantage on some level, or to just be vengeful towards Aaron Rodgers in a way of saying, hey, let's make this as late to the gun as possible without us like losing out on being able to trade him. So I think that part of that's there. I'm just kind of rooting for Dr. Phil to be in there to try and do some makeup stuff, and then maybe he'll get
psychology,
a little barnyard psychology, and we could end up with he could end up with a Baker, and we could wind up with an Aaron. So, but I, again, a Browns fan can dream. But I do think I think the June idea will only manifest itself if a team really comes hard to the table with like just a ton of gifts. And if it doesn't happen, if they're trying to be fair with the deal, more than anything, I think it could be August, before it actually begins to happen. If not, September, hoping that the Packers hoping they can deal him that late.
Yeah. It's a realization of it's not going to work. And also, if you're a team like the Broncos, you've tipped your hand way too early to get any sort of not really discount, but just like a fair deal. That's not going to happen. Our man Wendell, who, by the way, Wendell, I'm going to be doing some stuff with Dalton Reisner I'll be able to talk about a little bit later. So, Kansas State, what's up? He says, Jordan Love, of course, is having a good camp, Bloom.
Yeah.
Air quotes from Matt Waldman. Good camp for Jordan Love. I guess he's better than, Blake Bortles wasn't there, right?
Right.
So many people weren't there.
The 5 wide receivers weren't there.
Right.
Does that have any meaning? I don't know. Yeah, look, poor Jordan Love. I mean, can we just
I
say
feel
that?
bad for him. I was so glad when Aaron Rodgers on Kenny Mayne's show, which like ESPN, what are you doing? But like when he said, I love Jordan, because I feel so bad for Jordan Love. He's not ready. The Kevin Hart clip. He wasn't ready. He's not ready. So don't blame the kid.
No, and look, as it stands, and it's interesting to hear Rodgers say that, because Rodgers should identify with Love, right? I mean, that's the whole deal. In some ways, this is like history repeating itself, or it resembles enough the whole Favre Rodgers thing that you have to at least note that. And the reality is that Love being thrust into this position, and let's face it, right? So let's just do an informal poll here, guys, right? Forget about 2021. Will Aaron Rodgers be the quarterback in Green Bay in 2022?
No.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to like balance the abacus. I mean, it's over.
It's all about the love thrust that you just mentioned.
Right. Yes. It's not sometimes a cigar. It's just a cigar. So look, he's got immense pressure put on his shoulders. Immense pressure. Not like Rodgers, who'll get to be in the incubator for a while. And I guess this comes back to, it's so interesting the way that the pendulum swings, right? Because if you think of a coach who would say, my system is so good that I can put just about any quarterback in it, and as long as the quarterback is competent, my system will make us win. That's Kyle Shanahan, right? And what did Kyle Shanahan do this year? Trade up to number 3 for a stellar tools, like someone who can add value to plays at any point in a multiple faceted, just Trey Lance. God, can't wait to see him play. Anyway, and so can't
wait to see him start week 1.
Right. Well, yeah, I'd love to see that. So Matt LaFleur should not make the mistake like Kyle Shanahan saying, no, if you have the golden quarterback, that's actually the thing, not the system, because he went after the golden quarterback. So hopefully LaFleur is able to put Jordan Love in a position to succeed in a way that he must have felt confident. I guess there's some talk like it was really Gutekunst driven, the pick, that even LaFleur wasn't like totally in on it. But that seems, if that's the case, then that's a really bad process. Anyway, I hope that LaFleur can really set up Jordan Love to succeed, because there's going to be so much pressure on like a vacuum, a gravity vacuum. Mm-hmm. And that alone could be something like mentally, emotionally, that is just too much for him to bear. And I think that Aaron Rodgers supporting him publicly gives me some hope that maybe he can bear it.
Well, and Matt and I saw him, like Justin Herbert looked better at the Senior Bowl, obviously, because he's that guy. Right. But there were times when Steven Montez, and I really like Jordan Love. I like his mechanics. I like his tools. He's super aggressive. He doesn't know what he's looking at, Matt. But like we saw it, there was days when Steven Montez was the better quarterback at the Senior Bowl. Not to saying that's everything or nothing. But Bloom, super quick.
Yeah.
What if Jordan Love has to compete with Drew Lock?
Sure, or whatever quarterback's coming back, right? Because that's what's so funny. The chat room saying, "Oh, yeah, Jordan Love's having a good spring or whatever." It doesn't matter, because the starter, if it's not Aaron Rodgers in 2021, is going to be a quarterback that comes back in a trade. Derek Carr, Drew Lock, probably Drew Lock. I mean, I would guess if Denver's going to trade one of the 2 quarterbacks to Green Bay, that it would.
It's not Bridgewater.
It's not
Bridgewater. No.
Yeah. So that's basically what we're looking at here, and I think I don't want to say they know better, but I mean, again, you're still dealing with a Shanahan system, and they have a good offensive line, So you're setting up Drew Lock. If you see, what have we been talking about with Drew Lock, right? Like Pat Shurmur won't meet him halfway. He won't even meet him like 10% of the way. He won't go out to meet him. And this system will simplify. Like think again, like Jake Plummer, Brian Greasy. Yep. It just puts you in these. Even Chris Sims, to an extent, even though it's not a Shanahan tree. The idea is that you just make things binary, bite size, and then all of a sudden, the fact that you're athletic, the fact that you have arm talent, the fact that you're good sometimes at making inspired throws on the move, all of a sudden you look comfortable. And it's not that you necessarily become a better quarterback; it's just you're asked to do more of the things that you're comfortable doing. And I think that Drew Lock would definitely be a better fit there than he is in Denver.
That's right. He would be a very good fit. And, well, we know, Matt, the dirty little secret in the NFL is it's all about fit. And back to the Lions thing super quick. We got, again, fluff reporting, offseason reporting, whatever you want to say, Matt. But people saying, you know what? Hey, wait a second, guys. Jared Goff's not that bad. So that's kind of interesting, Matt. I think his ADP is like quarterback 32. I wrote about it today for Football Guys newsletter. So quarterback 32, not that bad.
Well,
but really, Matt.
But here's the thing. You look at this team and you understand that with the Lions, they have a pretty good offensive line. So if that offensive line plays well, we've seen Jared Goff be a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. The problem is that who's his wide receivers? You know, you have Hawkinson, and then after that, you need somebody to step up. Tyrell Williams has had one nice season, but is he a limited route runner? I'd say pretty much yes. But he's the most versatile route runner compared to the other guy on the outside, Perriman. And then the rest of the guys are young. So when you look at this team, I mean, this is a team that wants to run the ball, play action pass. Certainly Goff can throw it downfield. And there's a lot that you can like about Goff's game, but the thing that's difficult with him is pressure. And just in terms of how he makes reads with it, what he does pre-snap, and how he's able to handle himself from that perspective. And the preseason reports, certainly the observations are, you know, guys basically throwing against air right now. And it's, you know, it's the same thing when they talk about, you know, Jordan Love, you know, because what the report basically said with Love was he's a lot more, you know, the players saying he's a lot more familiar in the huddle with things of how we're supposed to be doing things now. You could just tell that he has a better understanding of what's happening. Okay, well, that's good. So now if we were taking a gun instruction class, you know, he understands how to load the gun. He understands how to clean the gun, but we still haven't seen him in the training portion of, like, you know, firing the weapon and advanced tactical weaponry and all those other things that, you know, we could relate to quarterbacking that haven't even come close. So to just say that he now understands his way around the weapon, I guess that's a start. You know, it's the same thing.
You got to get him to learn how to. You've got to get him to learn how to say gun or spell gun before you can get to that next step. Bloom, I'm sorry I'm being mean, but I'm just like, okay. Some people are going to say, well, look who Jared Goff has to throw to, and that's why blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it's just one of those guys where, okay, second team, where's his third team? You know, where's his backup job, next stop? Like, this is the way it's shaping up for Goff.
It is. Look, I'll start here, okay? The last time I watched Jared Goff play football, and remember, he was banged up. There was all that drama with John Walford. Remember, Sean McVay really would rather start John Walford, and then the injury is kind of an excuse, you know, because he's just done with Goff, and he was done with Goff, so that part was right. But in that game against Green Bay, the Rams didn't lose because of Goff. In fact, I would say that if Goff had been given a little more freedom, because when he was playing off script in that game, he was playing well. He's not an affirmatively bad quarterback, okay? He is a quarterback, as Waldman says, that, like, when there's pressure, like Miami just exposed this last year. I mean, I feel like the Miami game last year was when Sean McVay was like, I'm done. That's it. I have to do better than this. I can't have a quarterback that is this easy to solve, you know? Like,
and stop throwing screen passes every 4 plays. Because he's the most overrated. I'm sorry, I just got to say this. He's the most overrated coach in the NFL right now. He drives me crazy because, you know, he's such a darling over everything, but he can't stop drafting gadget players who aren't going to do anything. He's got Lance Dunbar-itis when it comes to that. I mean, Tutu Atwell, I'm sorry, that's not going to work out. You know, and then on top of it, you literally, the Buffalo game, it was like screens and more screens. Right. And he's going to blame Goff for the fact that he can't even, like, he goes into the Super Bowl, as Eric Stoner would say. He goes into the Super Bowl with basically the same kind of scheme that he was running that got exposed by the Lions back in week 14. And you didn't think Bill Belichick was going to outcoach you, and you didn't do anything different. Now, you could blame your quarterback for some of that, but why not instead, if you're at this point, or with Todd Gurley, where you decide to run and, you know, have a run game that's zone, and defenses are pulling out high school concepts to stop it, go to that extreme until the Steelers game in halftime, and somebody probably begged McVay, can we run some gap plays? Because this is right for gap plays, and we should have been doing this 6 weeks ago, you know, but you haven't. So to me, you know, I'm sorry to interrupt. It just gets me mad when I hear about McVay and all of this stuff, because
all he is, Matt, is a handsome Adam Gase, because there have been former players, and don't think too hard about who it is, that have said he's the smartest guy in the room. Just ask him.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
right. Okay.
He went to my rival high school, Marist. Ooh. So I can just say this: it was
what did they say about him at Marist?
Marist. He went to was it Marist or Westminster? I don't remember. Either one of those schools didn't matter. It was a private school. Went to a private school and down the way, where But I just look at this guy and and to me that nobody indicted him over the Super Bowl, and let that just pass like that. It, to me, it's just ludicrous.
And the Bears exposed him that year too.
Yeah, exactly. the week after the Lions. So it was like 2 weeks in a row, and they limp into the Super Bowl, and it's the same thing. And it's not anything that Goff could have done differently, unless he was like Brett Favre, Patrick Mahomes. And we saw, when you don't have an offensive line, or your offensive line is severely exposed, the best you can do is what Patrick Mahomes did, which is impress the Buccaneers receivers for almost hitting passes.
Right.
You're
right. And that's where I was going, Matt. I was going to the offensive line.
No. Niagara Falls, man.
It is good. That's important. That's important. And I want to address that. But you're right. Offensive line, I just want to say our minds are going to the same place. But what this eloquent Matt Waldman rant should stand for is the verdict is not totally in on whether, it was like a comparative negligence case, 70% Goff, 30% McVay, whatever. McVay has kind of taken control of the narrative here by just, I was going to sorry Joe that, just dumping Goff and saying almost through the way that and this is the greatest mystery of this offseason, okay? Because they basically paid a first-round pick to get rid of Goff's contract. Right, so that's like dismissed with prejudice. Sean McVay's like, it was your fault, and like Waldman is painting with his rant, not necessarily. And Detroit is situated with that offensive line, and if they really are going to be a single-minded bully ball, run the ball team, that's going to set up Goff in reasonable down and distances. And with an offensive line that is going to give him a reasonable chance to convert those medium-level difficulty plays. Sounds reasonable to me. Where this is really... So anyway, the mystery is, how did Goff draw a first-round pick as just take him off our hands, and Wentz, a third-round pick and probably a first-round pick, Darnold, a second-round pick, they were all failures last year, right? Mm-hmm. And you could say how much it was the coach, how much of it was Wentz, it was the organization. With Darnold, it was Adam Gase. But like you said, Cease, maybe there's a way you could look at this where McVay and Gase may have more similarities than you want to admit. And those quarterbacks draw compensation for their contracts. And Goff, it just seems like something is well out of whack there. The last thing I want to say is the Lions and what Brad Holmes and what Dan Campbell and company are doing, and it's a really interesting staff. We talked about this before. A lot of former players, like 6 or 7 former players, Aaron Glenn and Deuce Staley and so on and so forth. And they know that they don't have to really win this year, right? They're just putting together a team to play the season. They know. But because of that, it gives you freedom, right? It gives you a sense of freedom that maybe teams with expectations don't have to really realize your vision, And I think that it could absolutely be a case where we're looking at Jared Goff by week 7, week 8, week 9, because he has a good offensive line, because they're a team that's kind of just playing with that freedom of we don't have any expectations, rehabilitating his stock, being talked about as a player that may get an extension from the Lions or trade interest or whatever because the Lions are picking second or third, or maybe not because the Lions win 7 or 8 games. I want to also for the fans of the Lions. Because I'm a Pirates fan. Did you all see the Cecil baseball tangent? Did you see the Pirates today, the play that was going around? The Pirates had quite possibly the worst play in the history of baseball.
Yeah, you never seen baseball, ever.
Like the 8-year-old, I'm watching these Little League games, and even the kids at that age understand that you just step on first base. If the ball gets hit to you, just step on first base, especially when there's 2 outs. Anyway. So for Lions fans, I know they're in that same situation where it's like a ghost ship franchise, and I just hope that Brad Holmes can be the one to steer it into sunnier waters.
All this and Eric Bieniemy can't get a job. Anyway, Matt.
Yeah. I just think that Bloom brings up a good point about Goff but that's the thing that we don't know in terms of his trade value. Is it actually the fact that he can't handle pressure and that he needed plays called for him with McVay in the mic? Or was it that he went from a high school offense, as Todd Gurley said about Jeff Fisher's offense, where he had no chance in Hades, and then he goes to Sean McVay, who's the over-controlling coach, to the opposite extreme. So maybe what we might find in there is it's going to be one of two things. We're either going to find in there that, oh, Jared Goff actually has a brain and he's not some vapid guy with an arm, and he can make decisions. And if you let a player's coach let the player be a player, then we might see the player come out, because he was known at Cal as being pretty much a tough dude who, like, yes, he played an air raid offense, but again, Patrick Mahomes played an air raid offense too. I'm not going to say that he has the mind of Mahomes, but he might be a little better than what we thought, because people overcharacterize the air raid as again, a place for vapid QBs with basically an arm. Or he turns out to be exactly that, and the Lions, find out pretty quickly that he can't hold his water when it comes to making decisions, under pressure, and he can't make decisions pre-snap without somebody holding his hand. But I severely doubt that. Based on the pre-draft reports, there are a number of people that thought that Goff, with Goff or Wentz, that that Goff was the better quarterback. And so it'll be interesting to see, how this goes down. But if you find that suddenly I would like nothing better at this point, to be honest, to see Jared Goff make good decisions and Sean McVay be looking around going, trying to point a finger somewhere and realize that the finger's pointing back at him.
Well, if he points the finger at Matthew Stafford will tell him to get bent.
He'll bite it off, maybe.
His intelligence will not intimidate him. And Goff, God bless him. Maybe he's not the brightest bulb in the shed. I don't know. He didn't know where the sun came up, so whatever. But, there are people that can intimidate you, kind of take you out of your game. Honestly, we could sum it up as let him play. Just let him play. See what you can get. Stop being so overbearing.
Matt Stafford probably wrecked the mic in the helmet. Just pull the thing out. He might even do it like Jay Cutler would have. Jay Cutler would have gone through the ear hole and just pulled it out while he was pre-snap.
Matthew Stafford would take his helmet and slam it like Paul Stanley did with his Les Paul at the end of every Kiss show. And if that's not an old reference, I don't know what is. Although Bloom, in the first episode of the Audible, I did quote Kiss.
Yeah.
Because you wanted the best, you got the best. Even though I said, welcome
my
back.
My first favorite band. Show. Yeah. It would have been 1978 or so.
I have a Gene Simmons story for you guys later.
They were substitute teachers, right? They were substitute teachers in Long Island. And the original name, we'll just look up. Sorry, Joe. I won't even finish that. Kiss, yes. It's from our childhood. But I think this is fun. I think it's fun to set up the Lions as a potential feel-good story and mostly just make fun of Sean McVay.
And I think it's good, Bloom, like you often do, and I'd say we on this show often do. The narrative is, Jared Goff sucks.
Right.
Well, are we sure about that?
Right. And yet somehow the Carson Wentz and Sam Darnold, let's see what they can
Sam
do
Darnold
in a new
was
environment.
Almost a first-round pick, by the way.
Right.
If the 49ers had gotten their way. And
that's the reputation, maybe. Maybe Goff's gotten that reputation that might be a little bit undeserved, whereas Wentz and Wentz and Darnold are the big at-time athletes comparatively. So that's part of it too. I think when you look at second chances, that they look to the athlete first.
Well, and we all know this too for multiple reasons. Once a guy gets a reputation,
right,
whatever that reputation is, it is impossible, because you think that media members love to talk, coaches love to gossip. Right. They love the guy. They love to pick up the phone. Can you believe what he did? I can't believe that, what he did. That's how it happens. Yeah. And it may seem odd to people, Bloom, but they're worse than anybody.
Yes.
When it comes to rumor mongering.
A knitting circle of grandmothers?
Yeah. Look. Waldman, you're excellent at holding their feet to the fire always on this point. And isn't this the genesis of fantasy football, right? Isn't the genesis of fantasy football watching a football game saying, I could do better? I could make more out of that than than that coach does, right? So when people say, "Oh, you're not getting paid to run a team," or "You think you know better than the
Trust
coaches,"
these guys; they're the
right?
professionals.
Right, like when the talk was that Shanahan was going to take Mac Jones, I was like, really? And it's like, well, you think you know better than him? Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, that's what we do when we play fantasy football, right? Is we're trying to say that it's an inefficient market. That basically, like, the simplest way I can put it without turning this into like some like highfalutin jargon laden discussion is the distribution of opportunity is not efficiently spread out to the talent, and that's the players that are best situated to get the most value out of that opportunity. Coaches and GMs don't always make good decisions, and in fact, we can start to see the patterns of the bad decisions. And this is the whole assumption rational coaching thing. Put it on my gravestone. That we can watch this and we can incorporate it into our fantasy football analysis. But yes, we think we know better. And that's kind of why we're here and why we like talking about it. And it's not every team in every situation. And we're humbled as often as the coaches are. But the coaches are humbled. And sometimes it's us, or like a line of thought that, if not originates in the fantasy football circle, because you will see stuff out there, if you squint just right, that they will admit that fantasy football has advanced some of the conversations in NFL circles. That it really is an actual, I like to talk about us as like a academic wing in a university. We're doing our research, we're punching holes in each other's research, but we're trying to forward the knowledge. And it's always just about football and discovering kind of the mix of forces that create this outcome. And I think that, we can look at Sean McVay and we can say, no, I know better. Or we can look at some coaches and say that and be right. And it's a worthy conversation.
I enjoyed Bloom's conversation about this and trees on it. If we sum it up into 7 words, it's this. Have you ever worked in an office?
Yes, that's it. I cite you like once a month on that, Matt, that there are bad workplaces everywhere, including the NFL.
Yep.
If someone says yes and they're still arguing with you, they have never worked in an office.
Right.
That's all I got to say.
It was that one, what was it, TikTok that went viral of the guy in IKEA.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you check in the back? What do you think? The back is some magical place?
Yeah.
I used to work here. Well, things change, like
The meatballs aren't that great.
I'm going to tell my friends. Good.
Right,
good. Running around here. It was really brilliant. Really,
That was.
Stuck with you.
That was, yes.
Power to the workers.
Power to the workers. And there's my alarm to remind me. Notice I'm very reserved on Thursdays because I have to do 3 hours after this. So I'm like, let Matt rant. So Matt, thank you, my
Carry the ball.
friend.
You're very welcome.
You carry the rock. You tote the rock well. He's got hip wiggle and contact balance. His name is Matt Waldman. Follow him on Twitter at Matt Waldman. Check out MattWaldmanRSP.com. And, of course, check out Sigmund Bloom and everything that he does online everywhere, footballguys.com. And, well, I'll say this. If you're into shows like this one, you're a serious fantasy player. So head to footballguys.com, click the orange button in the upper right that says Join Now. It'll take you right to that early bird discount pricing. You love the show, you want to support the show, then footballguys.com is where you go. We'll do all the work, you do all the winning. For the great Matt Waldman and the fantastic Sigmund Bloom, I'm Cecil Lammey saying, by the way, I forgot to tell this story. I was walking around tonight in my Fan Jam t-shirt, available now at denverfan.com/shop.
Love it.
And I forgot I had it
Cecil's
on.
ratings. I want to see it closer to see what his ratings are.
Comics, movies, gaming, and football. Football's the bottom one. So anyway, I forgot I was wearing it. A t-shirt with my own face on it. Yes, because I'm that guy. And some guy walked up to me, was like, "Are you Cecil Lammey?" I was like, "Yes, I am." And he's a great listener and all that. And I was like, wait a second. I don't look like an aloha wearing this shirt, do I? He's like, no. So he was lying.
Good.
I totally looked like that. Anyway.
Nick doesn't look like he ever worked at an office, though. That suit's too nice to have worked in an office.
Very, very nice. Very dapper. All right, everyone. Stay tuned. Peace and stay frosty.